About 2 months ago, I made a video with the FF04, a super premium 9-liter PC case that was tailor-made to fit with a few specific components to create what I described as a piece of art. Now, the level of machining, design, and the color matching with the ProArt GPU is unlike any other case that I've seen. Well, until today, because there's actually another version of the FF04 that's a little bit smaller. This video is sponsored by Jawa.gg. If you're not familiar with Jawa, it's the #1 gaming marketplace online where you can find all sorts of deals to buy used or new components. And right now, they're having a bunch of holiday deals where you can save up to 50% on different components and custom PCs. It's also great because you can sell your own components to help offset the cost if you're wanting to upgrade your GPU as an example, or even buy a new custom PC. Now, the whole idea here is to help gamers buy and sell online without any of the risks of scamming or scalping that you see on other marketplaces. Now, there's a few ways you can save even more here. First, you can get $10 off just by using my code DJ10 and follow the link in the description. And if you're upgrading from an existing gaming PC, you can take your existing GPU or CPU and sell it on Jawa's site. Now, they have an instant offer option, which allows you to sell directly to Jawa. Now, once you ship it off, most sellers get paid within a single business day. Or if you want full control over the pricing, you can list it yourself. They've also got a large and growing Discord community if you're needing some support with your new build. So if you're wanting to save some money on your next PC, definitely go and check out Jawa.gg. Now, this is called the FF04 LP, or low profile, and that's because it's made to fit with a low profile GPU. Now, just like the larger version, it's also made of the same incredibly thick, high quality CNC machined aluminum alloy, which is cut with specific channels to direct airflow into the sides and out the top. Now, those thick pieces obviously is going to add to the overall weight. This thing is a brick weighing in at 13 pounds fully built. More weight doesn't necessarily mean better, especially if you're wanting a small PC for travel. Here it does add to the overall high quality feel. It's just like a solid brick of aluminum. Now, because of that, I wouldn't really consider this as something to travel with, at least not frequently or anything. I would probably point to something like the Velka 3 for that. Instead, I would consider this as a functional piece of engineering art for your desk. For the CPU, I'll be using the AMD 7600. This is a very efficient 65-watt CPU, and because this is also a sandwich-style layout, at only 5.5 liters, we are limited to a low-profile CPU cooler up to 40 millimeters in height. This CPU, paired with the Noctua L9i, has given me really good thermals and performance in the past, so I just felt like it would be an appropriate fit here. You can also fit basically any mini ITX motherboard in here, and so I'm going to be using one of my new favorites. It's the ASRock A620i Lightning. If I didn't know any better, I would think that this was a P-series board by looking at it. It's very feature complete, built-in Wi-Fi 6E, 2 M.2 slots, and enough I/O for a gaming board. It's also got an all-black aesthetic, which looks really good in this case, in my opinion. Now, for RAM, we are limited to 43 millimeters of clearance, so I have a 32 gig low profile set from Crucial that will work well here. Building in smaller cases like this can often be pretty involved, but this might actually be one of the easiest builds I've ever done. Now, hidden behind the magnetic faceplate are a couple of screws to take off the whole front panel. Then we have the side panel that covers the motherboard and the GPU. Both of those are on a rail system that can just slide right out. Flipping it over, the back panel actually has 2 layers. Both can be removed with just a few screws, and once those are unfastened, the remaining top and bottom pieces can be placed aside. These are also held in with CNC machined mounting points and tabs. It's a really effective way to keep all the panels perfectly aligned when you're putting everything back together. And that's it, we're ready to move all of our components in. Now, included with the case is a pre-installed 450 watt flex ATX power supply and pre-routed custom length cables. So this is super convenient. It takes a lot of the work out of the build process, and all we have to do now is secure the motherboard, plug in those power cables, power button, and the front USB-C cable. Then we have a riser cable that's included and pre-routed as well. I found that it's a lot easier to plug this in if you unscrew it from the other side, plug it into the motherboard, and then resecure it. Just like the original FF04, this case is only compatible with one specific GPU, and that's the Asus Low Profile 4060. This is also my biggest critique of this case, because I don't really feel like that's necessary in this one. You see, the original FF04's design just wouldn't work without a ProArt card. That whole case is designed around the card. It's perfectly color matched, and the design language mimics the card perfectly to where the card becomes essentially a part of the side panel of the case. Now, that's not the same here. Most of this low profile card is actually hidden away, and only the fans are exposed through the 3 cutouts. And yet you still have no choice but to use this card. And that's because the rear mounting points are cut to match the I/O and the screw holes. Now, if you look at the Gigabyte Low Profile 4060, it would almost work. The screw points are in the same place, but the I/O is different, as the HDMI and the display ports aren't in the same positions. The Asus card also uses a 6-pin connector instead of the 8 one that's on the Gigabyte card. I feel like this could have easily been made universal if we had the traditional mounting points on the back and then offered like a secondary cover that had ventilation, which didn't need to, perfectly align with the GPU's design. And then for the cable, you could just, include an extra 8-pin in the box. With that said, it's not lost on me that this is a hyper niche item with a specific design intent. But I feel like making the GPU mount universal could have been an easy win. Installing the GPU is still very straightforward. We just have to remove the I/O cover, plug it into the riser cable, and then fasten it with some included hex screws on the back panel. Now the last thing to do here is to reassemble the case. And that's the build complete. Now, I did talk to the designer and I asked him, theoretically, if there is a low profile 5060 and the mounting points move, would you offer a way for people to buy a new backplate with the updated mounting points? And he told me that if there is a way to make it compatible by only replacing like 1 or 2 pieces, then yes, that he'll do it. Now, obviously, none of us know what that's going to look like at this point. So like anything, if you're considering buying this, only buy it for what it can do today. And that's the same thing I would say for the original FF04 as well. Because while I'm sure that the ProArt cooler design has been very successful for Asus, and I would bet that they will continue to use that cooler design in the 50 series, that doesn't mean that the mounting points won't move or that the I/O won't move. Hell, they might even introduce a different port like USB-C. We have seen that on some AMD cards. So again, only buy something like this for what it can do today. Despite this being an A series board, it does have PBO, which is defaulted to auto, and because we're working with a small cooler, I'm going to disable that. I'm also going to use the Expo memory profile so that we can get those advertised speeds. And last, I'm going to use the standard fan profile for the CPU. Now, even though this is a smaller GPU, it's still a full-fledged 4060, and so you should expect typical 4060 performance here. Starting with the finals, 1080p, DLSS quality using the highest preset settings, and after 3 quick match rounds, that's roughly 40 minutes or so of gameplay, the CPU has been staying right around 76 degrees Celsius and the GPU at 70. Now switching over to something a little bit more GPU bound, Black Myth Wukong, 1080p, high preset, DLSS quality with ray tracing and frame generation off. I'm seeing the CPU level out at around 73 degrees Celsius and the GPU again at 70. To round out the test, I took upscaling completely off on Ghost of Tsushima and used the high preset. This pushed the GPU a little harder and the temps maxed out around 74 degrees Celsius. But if you're spending this much money on a new PC right now, you're probably going to want to at least play it in 1440p. So using the same settings across all 3 games and only increasing the resolution, the final's seen a 1 degree increase in both CPU and GPU. The GPU maxed out at 72 degrees Celsius in Black Myth Wukong, and Ghost maxed out at 74. So this all translated roughly the same in synthetic benchmarks as well, with a 10-minute Cinebench multi-core stress test resulting in a max CPU temperature of 76 degrees, but averaging around 75, and a 15-minute GPU intensive firmware stress test pushed the GPU to a max of 74, but again, averaging around 71. Now, as far as noise levels go, I am hearing a little bit of turbulence. I don't feel like it's enough to be distracting. Subjectively, I'm only hearing it when I'm looking for it. Otherwise, this isn't a silent machine when under full load. I'm reading about 48 decibels when stress testing. However, it is a few decibels lower when I'm actually playing a game. Okay, so now let's get to the price. As you can imagine, things like this don't come cheap, and so this costs a hefty $480. But keep in mind, that does include the power supply, which would cost around $140 if you bought it separately. So if you factor that in, you could kind of consider the case itself at $340. Still, a hefty price tag, but I think some context is important here. Now, this designer was making these cases on his own time for fun. That's what the FF in FF04 stands for. And there were people who seen his work and wanted the ability to buy and own one themselves. So he has now made that possible. This is a novelty luxury item that is not designed or intended for most people. If you're an enthusiast in this space who has the need for a small PC like this, you've got the money to spare, and you appreciate the craftsmanship it offers, then hey, this might be for you. And I am well aware that that is narrowing it down to like dozens of people. But I personally still love seeing projects like this and showcasing them because sure, right now, this is a niche expensive item. But if designers like this get the attention that I think they deserve, that can then spread awareness of their talents and later give the opportunity to create something with a more wider appeal and hopefully at a lower price. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.